Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, we're looking at plant material to add to our gardens and change. Sometimes we just do it because we're bored. So we pot up, usually dormant plant material, and we give it away, or we give it to different hort societies for their plant sales, etc., etc. We just decide we don't want it. All right? And of course, anytime I see a forsythia, whenever I move or on my property, it's gone. Right? Simply because I'm bored with forsythia, and there is a certain number of forsythias that are newer that I might be willing to try. But we'll see. Let's just say I'm not planning on moving soon, and I don't plan on ripping out anything I've got in my garden at the moment. So, we'll see. But one of the ones that I've got in my garden, I've had it for many years, is Cotoneaster. And Cotoneaster apiculatus. Now, I like this one because the berries are so large. They're red. They're in the fall. And the fall color on this plant is so nice and red. So the little pink flowers, it's got the glossy leaves. It's really quite pretty. Tough as nails. It makes an excellent ground cover. I have used it up walls or fences, but it's not my favorite way of using it. And trimming it back and back and back, you end up getting sort of a shrub out of it. So you end up with a plant that could be 3 feet tall, or you can keep it trimmed down to about a foot or sometimes a little less as a ground cover. And I like it as a ground cover. It's tall enough to cover up the little bit of weeds and a few leaves that fall through. So when the metasequoias above my ground cover falls through in the fall, not all of it, because sometimes the metasequoias can drop heavily all at once. And that's the case. What I do is I just take a light leaf rake and just lightly pull off some of the leaves from the metasequoia so that I can still enjoy the red leaves and some of the cranberries from the apiculatus. Now, they're not edible, though I have to admit I've seen the birds going after them and eating them. So we'll see what happens with that. Sun and shade, so it goes well in the sun and does better in sun than in deep shade. So if it's going to be shade, it should be partial shade. Okay? Hardy to zone 4, and I really think that this is a plant that you can utilize throughout your garden. And then there's Coral Beauty. This one's been around a long time too. This is Cotoneaster damari. It's a low-spreading grower. It's got the glossy green leaves, coral berries, and to be honest with you, white flowers. This one's not as much of a favorite of mine than the apiculatus. So it works, yes. It is a low spreader. So if you're going to need something that's very low, easier to maintain short, then you want this one. The bloom time is in late spring. Again, you know that it likes the sun and a little bit of shade. Now, then there is Hessii. Now, Hessii is a horizontalis variety. This is probably the oldest, most popular group of Cotoneasters. It's neat, it's tidy, it has a nice spreading habit. It's got a rich burgundy fall color, which makes it good. There's a good resistance to spider mites and fire blight. I will say this, it's tough. It's the zone 4. And I like this one in the fact that it's a little shorter. And it does have a late spring bloom. And this means that when you're really out in the garden, it's in bloom. So take a look at Hessii, Cotoneaster, and understand that all Cotoneaster are susceptible to fire blight. Now, in my neighborhood, we used to have a lot of mountain ash, which were very susceptible to fire blight. And you never touched or trimmed your Cotoneaster until the mountain ash were in good berry. Now, I don't mean color, but the berries had set. Because fire blight works best when there's an open flower or an entry wound, and that's usually when it's easiest for fire blight to move. And it took out some of the old pears that were in the park behind me as well. And the fire blight from the pears is what got the mountain ash and gave them fire blight. And the fire blight, I would get a little bit here and there in my ground cover each year from the mountain ash. So this is why I did this, and it worked very well. I had, instead of spider mite, I had a bigger problem actually with aphids. Aphids are easier to control. I just use a spray of water very heavily a couple of times, and they're gone. But you got to get them before they can fly. Okay? Little Dipper is another Cotoneaster. This is a Procumbens variety. It's very, very fine, low growing. It's got white flowers in the spring, red berries in late summer. It's a dense, low habit that's a little less prone to catching the leaves from other plants because it is so low. Now it is considered probably one of the best of the Cotoneasters. Its height is 6 to 8 inches, making it shorter, hardy to zone 5. Again, it likes full sun to partial shade. Moon Creeper is another Damarai variety of Cotoneaster. It forms dark green mat, large white flowers. It's hardy to zone 5. This one I have not seen as much of around, but it's starting to get a little more popular, so we'll see what happens with this one. And then there is another one called Scarlet Leader. Now, Scarlet Leader has a really heavy crop of scarlet fruit and dark green leaves. It's a very rapid grower. It's low and mounded. So, low mounded spreading habit. To me, it sort of looks like the mountains, rounded mountains, okay, in miniature. You may want to do that in miniature train sets, etc., as this being a background mountain. You may want to try that. 1 to 2 feet tall, hardy to zone 5, same light. Most of them and all of these Cotoneasters are pretty much easy to grow in most soils, though I do like to make sure they get adequate moisture in the summer heat. Tom Thumb has been around a while. It's very low. In my opinion, this one, even though it is so low and so dwarf, that I'm not very fond of this one. It's a very low cushion forming plant. It's almost like a mat of glossy dark green leaves. It's great in rock gardens, though. I will say this, or creeping over a wall or a path. Yes, pink flowers, red fruit, great red fall color on the leaves, but it is also hardy to zone 4. So you've got some hardiness, you've got summer fruit, spring bloom, fall color. It's just, for some reason or other, not my favorite. But used in the right way, it's excellent in doing exactly that. Over rocks, in rock gardens, etc. Now, the next one I want to do is Daphne. I'm only going to do one. I've never had great success with Daphnes in my garden. I always find that they peter out. And Moonlight Sonata is an improved variety of Briggs Moonlight. It's a little wider and darker green margins on the leaves. It's nice contrast because of that. Pink buds, open, fragrant white flowers. Yep, just like you're used to for Daphnes. It's a tidy mound that's good in containers, but to be honest with you, I hope it's a lot better than the other Daphnes. I have not tried it. I'm too afraid to try it in my garden and spend the money and lose it again. I've tried different Daphnes over the years, and every time they never last more than a couple of years. Hardy to zone 5, so we're fine there. They bloom in late spring, which is good. They're fragrant, they love the sun, and they're supposedly deer resistant. I will say this, if you're going to try this new Moonlight Sonata and see. Let me know if you had better success than I did. I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this has been the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.